What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today, as you can tell by the title, we are back with another updated hero guide, this time focusing on General Grievous. A few months back I did a poll to see if you guys wanted to see all of the hero guides get updated, which as you can see by the result was a pretty resounding yes. And the last time I did a Grievous guide was actually 2 weeks after he was launched, so sometime in probably November of 2018. So this one is probably one of the guides that needs an update the most. Now you can see on screen what we're going to be going through in this video. We will of course start off with his base stats, then go through and break down all of his abilities, and then I will touch on both some tips for Galactic Assault and the hero game modes, covering both the star cards as well as just some general gameplay tips as well. So if that is what you guys are looking for in a hero guide, then make sure to drop a like on the video. Now, keep in mind that almost everything in this guide was tested in arcade, and while I'm 99% sure that all of these stats do transfer over to multiplayer, just bear in mind that there is always the chance that some stats may change from arcade to multiplayer, so if you see any stats that don't seem right, then that is most likely what's happened. So, getting stuck into it, first off we're going to take a look at his base HP, and he does have an above average health pool for a saber user, coming in at 800 HP. On top of that, he does also have 250 health regen as well, which is pretty much the average for the saber users, so you can go from 800 HP all the way down to 550 and still be able to regen all the way back to full health. Now, his weapon or weapons of choice are his blue and green sabers that he stole from the Jedi that he killed, and obviously he does have 2 sabers normally and 4 sabers with the use of one of his abilities. He deals 130 damage per hit from the front and 160 damage per hit from behind, which is again just above the average for the saber users. So not only does he have high health, but also a high damage output as well. Now, he has a swing speed of 1.8 swings per second, which is just slightly below average due to the higher damage output from behind, but this is actually slightly faster than his old swing speed, which was 1.5 swings per second. His lunge distance is what I'd class as short. His first swing from a sprint is actually pretty decent, but any swings from a standstill are pretty bad if I'm going to be honest, so just like I said in the Dooku guide last week, you do need to make sure you're close enough before you swing. As for his stamina pool, I have classed it as low, as his blocking stamina is so bad that it actually makes me wonder if maybe it's bugged, and his swing stamina isn't terrible, but it's definitely not great either. Now, moving on to his abilities, and he does have a pretty beastly set of abilities, and in my opinion they are probably some of the more deadly abilities in the game. His L1 ability is called Thrust Surge, which has a 12-second cooldown, and this one pretty much sends Grievous forward, dealing a stab-like attack through his enemy. It deals 160 damage per hit, and it will also knock the enemy down, but it does require a lock-on to be able to use it, which you can see on the ability icon with a red marker. This ability is amazing for knocking down enemy heroes who are causing you a bit of trouble, and it's also great for making ground on an enemy who's maybe running away or something, as Grievous is definitely a little bit slow. Its only real weakness is that if you use it near an edge or something, it can often drag you off the side of the map or into a room full of enemies or something, so just be careful of where you use it. Moving on to his L1 R1 ability, this one is called Unrelenting Advance, and it has a very fast 10-second cooldown. This ability causes Grievous to equip all 4 of his sabers in the spinning motion that we see in Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars, blocking damage from the front and dealing 110 damage per hit to anyone in its path, lasting roughly 5 seconds. This ability is amazing at closing in on enemies without having to take damage or waste your stamina blocking, and it also deals a heap of damage really fast as well, so if you can use it on heroes or reinforcements, you should be able to take them out fairly easily. Its only real downside is that it does have a pretty clunky animation at times, and so you can often take a lot of damage from behind if you're not paying attention. Moving on now to the R1 ability, this one is called Claw Rush, and it has a 15-second cooldown. This one sends Grievous scrambling forward along the ground, dealing 130 damage to anyone in his path as well as knocking them off their feet. Claw Rush is amazing for quickly closing down on your enemies and knocking them so they can't run away, and if you cancel the ability right as you hit someone, you can actually deal another 130 damage as he stands up. As for its weaknesses, honestly I can't really think of any. This is probably one of the better abilities in the game in my opinion, but if there are any weaknesses that you guys can think of, then make sure to let me know down in the comments. So that is it for all of his base stats and abilities. Now we're going to move on to some of the more important stuff, starting with his best star cards for Galactic Assault. Obviously it really does come down to personal preference, so these definitely aren't the only cards that you can use, but these are just the cards that I think are the most important and most well suited cards for Galactic Assault. So the first card I'm going to mention is his Beating Heart star card, and this one gives him up to 100 extra health regen when fully maxed. This is a pretty obvious one, he can almost heal half his health with this card, so for me it is a no-brainer. The next card I'd recommend using is his Sith Trained card, which gives him an added 30 damage on his saber swings at the cost of 25% more stamina drain. This makes him able to one-hit kill all regular classes other than the heavy, and I actually used to say to not use this card as it used to be about 40% back when he launched, but for 25% I think it is definitely worth it. Now for the third card, this one is the lineup weaklings card, and this one makes it so that his Claw Rush deals an extra 50 damage upon impact. It says on the card that it's only after the first hit, but I tested it in my Mythbusters series and it deals that damage straight away unless they changed it recently without mentioning it, but either way this is definitely a very handy card. Now the last card I'm going to mention is probably to replace the Sith Train card if you don't really feel like you want to use that one, and this one is the Cowardly Retreat card. This one gives you up to 90% damage reduction when you use Claw Rush, which is amazing for when you just want to use it to clear out an entire hallway full of enemies, or if you want to simply use it to run away to safety. Either way it is definitely very handy. Now, like I said, these are the main cards that I would personally recommend using. However, if you do disagree, then definitely feel free to let us all know down in the comments section, as there really is no right or wrong when it comes to something like choosing star cards. So now moving on to some of the best maps to choose Grievous on when you're playing Galactic Assault, and the top 3 that I've picked are Tatooine, the Death Star and Naboo. All of these maps are obviously kind of urban close quarters maps for the most part, and that combined with his damage and his abilities is a match made in heaven. Now obviously this doesn't mean that these are the only 3 maps you should choose him on. He's honestly great on almost every single map in the game other than some of the more open ones, but these ones are probably just a good starting place if you're not too sure what to choose him on. Now as for some tips for Galactic Assault, and like I touched on a little bit earlier, Grievous's lunge distance can often be a little bit problematic, and it's oftentimes the main reason that I die, because I pretty much end up standing there swinging like an idiot about a meter away from my enemies. Again, I touched on this a little bit in my Dooku guide as well, as he is very similar in that way, but the best way to counter this is mainly just to try and always keep that in the back of your mind, and know that if you spam that swing button, you're most likely going to end up in a fair bit of trouble. Using the Sith Trained card can help combat this a little bit, as rather than landing a one hit and then having your enemies roll around your ankles, you're usually going to be able to kill them with that first blow anyway, so if you do find this lunge distance a little bit hard to get the hang of, then Sith Trained is definitely the way to go. The other thing that you can do to stop those rolly boys is just to keep in mind that they will roll if you come close, so often it's best to actually just hold your block and move towards them looking like you're going to hit them, maybe by sprinting or just dropping your block for half a second, and doing that is going to lure them into rolling straight away. Once they have rolled, all you need to do is just wait until they're almost back up at their feet, at which point they'll be completely unable to move or do anything to stop you, leaving them as easy prey for your lightsabers. It can kind of be hard to get the hang of this if you are a newer player, but just try and play things slowly and you'll quickly learn that people are just going to roll as soon as they feel like they're in trouble, and when they do roll you instantly gain the upper hand in that situation, so long as you don't swing spam. Now, when it comes to his abilities, like I said, Claw Rush would have to be one of the best in the game, as you can literally clear entire hallways all on your own with this thing, and not only that, but it doesn't often put you in dangerous situations either, so long as you do use it correctly. It's always a good idea to cancel it out as soon as you hit that last enemy. For example, if there are say 5 enemies in a row, cancelling it when you hit that 5th enemy will deal that extra damage, yet all the other ones will have been knocked down as well. If you do time it right, and this is easier said than done, you can actually dodge backwards as soon as the animation is finished for the cancellation, and if it is timed right, some of that dodge will actually still count the damage, meaning that rather than just dealing damage in the one spot, you can actually kind of use your dodge as its own attack. So try your best to give that a go, but like I said, it is not very often that it actually happens. Now, one last little tip for Grievous is to do with his stamina, or more specifically his blocking stamina, as like I said, it is absolutely terrible. When I play Grievous, I tend to play him as if he doesn't even have a block at all, and because of that I don't often put myself into situations where I'm going to need to use it. Now that doesn't mean that I don't use the block. If someone shoots at me then I will still use it, but it just means that I'm not relying on it, which is pretty much exactly how you need to treat it, because it is completely unreliable. If I'm using Obi-Wan for example, I know that I can walk into a hallway holding my block and it's going to last a pretty long time. However, with Grievous I'd be dead within seconds in that situation, so I guess what I'm trying to say is just not to put yourself in situations where you'll need to rely on that block. Grievous can definitely be a little bit tricky to get the hang of because of his low blocking stamina combined with his unique abilities and stuff like that, but with a fair bit of practice and some of these tips, it should hopefully go a long way towards improving your Grievous gameplay overall. So that is going to be it for the Galactic Assault tips. Now we're going to move on to some tips for the hero versus villain game mode. So starting off with the best star cards, and the first card I'm going to recommend is the Beating Heart star card again, as extra health regen is pretty much always going to be useful. The second card I'd use is the Deadly Slashes card, which allows Unrelenting Advance to deal an extra 40 damage per hit. Now this ability is insane in these game modes, and so having that extra damage makes it all that much better. As for the third card, this one is the Ceaseless Assault card, which is again for the Unrelenting Advance ability, and this one pretty much makes it so that you take less damage when using it by up to 40%. Now if you don't want to use any of those cards, then the Sith Trained card is another decent option as well. The added damage is nice against heroes, but at the same time you're going to be running out of stamina a hell of a lot, so I personally don't use this one, but it might suit your playstyle nonetheless. Now, moving on to some tips for the hero game modes, and if I'm going to be honest, most of it can be transferred straight from the GA tips, so I won't cover too much, but I will just touch on what I mentioned. Like I said about Unrelenting Advance, this ability absolutely melts enemy heroes, especially when they're a newer player. All you have to do is just activate it and try and get as close to them as you can, and you're either going to take a heap of their stamina or you're going to deal a whole lot of damage. Claw Rush is also great against enemy heroes as well. If you do land a hit, then you should always try and cancel it for that extra damage, and all up you can deal a quick 260 damage, plus you can usually get in a saber attack as well, taking it to nearly 400 damage within just a few seconds. Like I said earlier, swing spamming is a big no-no with Grievous. If your stamina drains, then you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble, as you'll obviously be completely defenseless, so try and play it a bit smarter and deal damage when you see an opening rather than just spamming. Now, if you do happen to have your stamina drained, the best bet is to use any 3 of your abilities, mainly Unrelenting Advance, as it will actually block and deal damage without using stamina, but honestly any of them will do in order to get a quick break to gain your stamina back. Now, as for some characters to look out for, Han, Luke and Anakin are the 3 main characters that can cause you some trouble in my opinion. Han's damage output is crazy high, and if your stamina does get drained from his shots, it's not going to take him long at all to take you out, so definitely keep your eye on Han, and essentially you just want to try and take him out as fast as possible. As for Luke, his swing speed is just pretty ridiculous honestly, and it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Not to say that he's impossible to beat or anything like that, but just try and avoid letting him get some quick attacks, as his swing speed buff from a while ago is pretty deadly. Now, as for Anakin, he's not too bad either, but we all know that Anakin players love to just spam those abilities, which can result in a death more often than not. One-on-one he's not too bad to face, but if he catches you off guard and spams those abilities, it does not bode well for you at all. But anyway guys, that is going to be it for our General Grievous Hero Guide. Hopefully some of these tips helped you guys out, and if they did, then make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you don't miss out on any more Battlefront 2 videos or live streams. Feel free to comment down below which characters you'd like to see next, and I will try my best to get onto it as fast as possible. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.